So good morning, everyone. And thank you, Liz, for that introduction. And first of all, let me say thank you for inviting me back. Last year was my first year at Power to the Pixel, and I was blown away by some of the ideas and the new thinking about content and storytelling. So I do actually believe this is a wonderful platform for discussing those ideas and shaping our thinking collectively. Today, the topic that I want to talk about is entitled The Stories That We Can Tell. And specifically, I want to talk, as Liz said, about the way that I think our industries can work together. So me representing the world of advertising and many of you representing the world of content creation outside of advertising, so filmmaking, writing, and content in general. Now, I've chosen this topic because whilst I believe that we're all familiar with the idea that today's digital and connected economies gives us huge opportunities, I don't yet think as an industry, as a community, we've identified the white space that could exist between our industries. So that's what I want to talk about today, the white space. Now, the background to all of this is based on an experience that I had back in around 2008, 2009, whilst I was living in the United States. At the time, I was working on a project that was connected to 8801 Sunset Boulevard. Now, for those of you who don't know, 8801 Sunset Boulevard is the address of the original Tower Records. So in the United States, it's actually a mecca to many people who love music. Our idea was connected to the fact that in 2009, 8801 Sunset Boulevard was home to a retail store, a fashion retail store. And so our idea was to connect fashion and music in a new and compelling way. And incidentally, we were using the phrase transmedia at the time. Now, initially, the idea went really well. There were loads of people interested in the idea from the worlds of fashion, from the world of music. Even the mayoral office of LA was very interested in the idea on the back of what it could do for the region. But suddenly, from my perspective, the conversations took a turn for the worse. And they took a turn for the worse largely because they stopped focusing on the idea itself and started focusing on which advertisers we could get to support the idea, who could fund the idea. It was as if the only relationship that could exist between the content creators on the one hand and advertisers on the other was about funding. And it got me thinking, is that the sum total of the relationship that exists for us in advertising and you guys in content creation? And it was a question that I couldn't resolve for a little while, until recently, where I came to a set of conclusions, and I want to share those with you today. The first conclusion is that advertising really doesn't need you guys. It sounds a little bit harsh, but unfortunately it's true. The advertising industry has, over the last couple of years, I believe, upped its game. It has got new talent, it's got new ambition, and it's already got an abundance of what it considers to be creative resource in a number of different fields to satisfy its needs. And an example of this, if any of you do attend Cannes, the annual festival for advertising, the Cannes Festival of Creativity, you'll see some really outstanding ideas that are emerging within our market right now. And I could refer to many of them, but I just want to talk about two. The first is from Dove, and the second is from Coca-Cola. Now, the Dove campaign is interesting, and I think it's an outstanding example of real creativity within our industry. Within a month of the campaign launching, which happened earlier this year, this particular campaign, called Real Beauty Sketches, managed to achieve 114 million views. That's in a single month. Today, it holds the record as the most viral video within the advertising sector. And it's based on a very simple idea, and this is where I think the advertising industry has improved. It's learned how to come up with very simple ideas. The idea was that women too often underestimate their own sense of beauty. The execution of this insight was also magnificent. In this example, a group of women were asked to describe their physical appearance to a sketch artist. That sketch artist then drew sketches of those women based on their self-perceptions, but also a second drawing based on the self-perceptions of a stranger. Invariably, the portraits that were the most flattering were those from the stranger and not from the main subject. Under this idea, Dove was able to promote its notion of beauty is within us all. And I think the level of attraction, the level of conversations, the love and affection that was shown towards this campaign is an indication of the strength of the idea and the strength of the thinking from the agency and the client.
Can I just ask, how much more soap did they sell? Did they see a spike in sales? By that much, was it successful?
Yes, they have,
Okay.
and it's global. So one of the things that Dove or P&G and Unilever, companies like that, are very concerned about is the sales effect of their campaigns. And both of these campaigns I'm going to talk about today had huge sales uplift. But I'll come on to talk about that fact a little later on. The second campaign, which is Coca-Cola's Small World Machines, doesn't have the numbers in terms of viral effect that Dove has, but it's no less impressive. In this particular instance, Coca-Cola and its agencies decided to create an entirely new piece of technology, a 3D touchscreen interface that would create a live communication portal between strangers in Pakistan and India. The idea was to connect two countries, the people of two countries that have been disconnected by decades of war. Now, through the interface that they created, people could wave their hands, they could touch the screens and effectively touch each other, they could dance in front of each other, they could draw peace signs, and of course they could share a Coke. What I think is really interesting about this example, however, is that Coke took the time to create a piece of technology. That's a far cry from where advertising has been historically, and I think it represents a big step change in our industry. So, on the one hand, we're doing very well. We're producing some great content, we're getting huge levels of traction, and our creativity is up. So we don't need you. But I suppose you could say the same for us. You don't need us either. From a creative standpoint, at least, there are many examples of outstanding work that's combining technology with different forms of story. And I'm sure that over the course of the next couple of days, we're going to see many examples of those in this particular forum. So what am I talking about when I say we don't need each other, but there is white space? Well, of course, I'm talking about something new. Now, it's trendy today for every story or presentation to be interactive. So here's the interactive section to my presentation. Can somebody finish this sequence for me? Yeah. Anybody else? 816. So, of course, some of you said 2468. Some of you said 24816. Now, those of you who said 68, there's nothing wrong with that, but you were thinking linearly. Those of you who said 24816 are thinking exponentially. What's really interesting is if you extend that sequence for 100 iterations, you get to the figure 200 for 2468, and this unpronounceable figure for 24816. Now, Dr. Bauer at Goldsmith University has used this analogy to talk about the difference between technology and the creative industries. In the main, technology, and the line that you see here, represents the value growth curve for the creative industries versus the value growth curve for technology. It's undeniable that technology, in terms of its impact on people's lives, is having a huge effect. Today's technologies are creating new value, and they're shaping and reshaping the very notion of value in people. And the challenge for our industries is not to continue to improve our creativity, advancing our thinking, advancing our creativity step by step, but to actually bridge the gap that sits between our industries and the impact that technology is having on their lives. In other words, there comes a time when creativity isn't enough, when actually what we do need are real leaps in thinking just to keep a pace with the expectations that people have of the things and the value that you can create for them. And so that's what I mean by white space. That's the area that I think that we can collaborate that we need to have big leaps in thinking in order to create new forms of value. Now, I won't talk about the world of film as much as I'll talk about the world of advertising. For me, there are two areas that we in advertising have to focus on if we want to leap. The first is that we need to learn how to extract value out of today's technologies. And the second is that we need to balance the needs and the desires of business with the needs and the desires of individuals and those of society. Now, I'm sure that you're all familiar with the concept of big data. Big data is a byproduct, I think one of the strongest byproducts of the technologies that we have and we use in our day-to-day lives. But whatever we think of big data, we should think again. Big data is about to get a lot bigger as all of these technologies are integrated into our lives. As our world becomes characterized by connected people, connected things, smart technologies, and big ideas. In fact, it's anticipated that by 2015, the volume of digital content will increase from 2.7 zettabytes to 7.9 zettabytes. Now, what's a zettabyte? It's just a very, very, very big number, apparently. But we tend to think about big data as information when, in fact, we should think of big data in terms of inspiration and ideas. Big data represents images. It represents sentiments, experiences, thoughts, ideas, connections, movements, actions that occur naturally in our day-to-day activities. And as such, big data are real signals of humanity and the evolution of humanity. In the advertising industry, at least, I'm not sure what it's like in yours, big data is really considered to be a four-letter word. It's the science of ones and zeros, and it's all about pushing advertising in front of more people more effectively. It's all about targeting, in effect. In fact, I think that we should think about big data less as the science of ones and zeros, but the science of oohs and ahs, the revelations that can drive original thought. Now, as a psychologist by training and by leaning, big data is the kind of thing that turns me on. But as an advertiser, I think it's the opportunity for us to take big leaps creatively. The Dove case study was built on the back of an insight that 4% of women think of themselves as unattractive. But imagine the kind of ideas that we could come up with if we were mining this data more effectively, if we were looking at the data that comes from everything that we do in our digital lives today as a source of inspiration, as a source to tell new stories. And I believe that together we can do that. Whether that's from the content side or the tech side, we can begin to mine data to find new stories to tell. The second area that I want to talk about concerns the evolution of commercial ideas. Ever since the strategic consulting firm Latitude started its investigations into the future of storytelling, I've been fascinated by some of their findings, and I'm sure that some of you will be aware of them. But their latest round of research makes for some really interesting reading. According to their survey of 15 to 59-year-olds across the US, the UK, and Brazil, audiences are expecting a lot more than what we deliver today. According to their research, consumers want context, they want portability, they want connection, they want value, they want experience and entertainment, they want immediacy. These are things that they expect not only from the world of storytelling, but from the world of advertising as well. They want a backstory to how a product is created. They want the ability to carry out experiences. They want to interact with the people behind the ideas and fans of that idea. They want to have a sense of a deal, and I don't think that that's just about cash. They want new experiences that feel like entertainment as well as information. And they want to act upon the things that they find interesting right away. I also found it very interesting with regards to the stats that came out of this research. 94% of people are motivated by interacting with people, places, and things, not just interacting with the ad or with the content And 91% of people are motivated by the concept of real-time storytelling. Now, I think this type of data is going to force us to think very differently about the types of commercial ideas that we, in my industry at least, thinks about. Advertising has historically always been an emotional wrapper around a product. You give it some emotion and people will buy it. In fact, there was a psychologist in the United States who came up with a very simple equation. If they like the ad, they'll like the product, they'll buy it. So make the ad more appealing. I think all of the data that we've begun to see about the expectations that people have of advertising is going to force us to shift on that. Actually, I believe that a product wrapped in emotion will not be enough. We need provocations. We need ideas that by design are instigated to create change and sustainable change. And this becomes the new role of advertising. It's only through a provocation that people can interact. It's only through a provocation that people can share, can discover, can join, and buy. And actually, those 4 actions become the most dominant actions required in brand building, I believe, in the future. Historically, marketing has always operated on the basis that if I get you to buy, that's it. But in a connected world, it's all about sharing has value to a business as well as to an individual. Discovery, as we've discussed today, can have real value in people's lives, but it can also have value for a business. When people understand more about what it is that you're offering them in terms of value, they will feel that affinity towards the brand. Joining, being part of something, is a basic human need. We can build those types of mechanics within our commercial ideas. Now, these are types of ideas that at Naked Communications we're beginning to build into the services that we provide to clients. And even at 4 a.m. this morning, I was editing an idea that needs to be with the client this afternoon, really drumming home the fact that the idea has to be stronger than a traditional advertising idea. And I would love to be able to share with you who we're doing this for and the kind of ideas that we're doing, but it is top secret at this moment in time. But wait a few months and you'll see something really exciting. So my provocation really today is really simple, I suppose. The advertising industry, I was being facetious at the beginning, the advertising industry really does need you. And we would love to continue to receive your ideas, your films, your stories. But what's more important, I think, is if you share with us your curiosities, the insights that you're generating about people. If you share with us the big ideas, the provocative ideas that you want to introduce into the world, and if you share with us some of your new story experiences, your new ideas in this space, then I think we can collaborate together. It's important that we begin to think in this way, because I think consumers are increasingly expecting that service from us. And I believe that if we do that, then maybe we can leap together and actually create real change. So thank you.